citizen, kingdom citizen, yeah, yeah. Kingdom citizen of Wisconsin. Kingdom citizen, yeah, yeah. Kingdom citizen. Blessings, 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 everybody, and welcome to Kingdom Citizens of Wisconsin. But it's also Think About It Tuesday. That's right, we're going to mix them in together. Think About It Tuesday with Kingdom Citizens of Wisconsin. And it's going to be fun, you guys. You guys, it's going to be fun today because I have someone on that is going to help me out on today. Ladies and gentlemen, she is known as Mama Bear. She's known as uh, Killer Bees. She will take you out if you try to take her freedom away. She's known as the woman that says, don't tread on her rights, ladies and gentlemen. And if you go after her kids, she is known as the Grand Reaper. She will take you out. So, without further ado, let's bring on the one we call, AKA Constitutional Queen, Sarah.
Oh my gosh, Dr. King. Every time I'm thinking I'll start it with a straight face and be serious, and you get me laughing every time. So I guess it's a good thing.
Well, see, I knew as I look backstage and I see your reaction, I'll be like, okay, let me keep it going now. I'll be like, let's keep it going because they can't see you backstage, but I can
Yeah,
see.
but you're entertained.
I know, right? So I'm like, okay, let's just do it and have some fun with it and
Oh my
everything.
goodness.
So how are you on this beautiful Tuesday?
Oh my goodness, we had sun today for the first time in forever. I can't tell you how much that is a lifesaver for me. Winter is not you know that whole what do they call it, seasonal affective disorder, the SAD, right? That
Right.
is like the seasons, especially the dark of winter, is one of the hardest times for me emotionally. I have to really depend on my savior to keep me going.
And see me, I'll be like, yes, winter. Why? Because I get to stay in.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the cozy feel. So we've got some really fun little beeswax candles, and they don't have a lot of scent, so it doesn't make your head ache. But they're really bright, and it's nice. We'll just sit at night with a cup of tea and have those candles going, and we'll read books by candlelight, and the kids really enjoy that.
Yeah, now that's fun. I look at it and be like, okay, wintertime is the time that we replenish ourselves. We rest up because
Mhm.
a lot of times we're snowed in, and I love being snowed in so I can
Yeah.
rest up.
Being a homeschool mom makes that so much easier because I don't have to get my kids out the door at 5 o'clock in the morning.
But see, I know your kids hate that because they don't get a snow day.
Oh my gosh, we get snow days all the time, we just don't call them that.
Be like, wait a minute, mama, what you doing? This ain't snow day.
No, you know what they get to do though, is they get to come to school in their pajamas and have a cup of hot cocoa with marshmallows.
Oh, wow, okay. Where was homeschooling when I was coming up?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But you know what? I don't even think I would want to have been homeschooled because my daddy would have probably been the principal, and Lord have mercy. Could you imagine going to the principal office and it's your dad?
Oh my goodness, yes, I can imagine it because I actually experienced it, so
Yeah, and it was
and my
what?
mom was the type of teacher who really, really liked the red pen, so
Oh, really?
oh yeah, yeah. She graded my diary entries.
What?
Yeah. I don't know how you can grade somebody's diary entry. It's completely subjective, but she did it.
Oh wow. See, no, I can't. I mean, I understand that in a way because um, ever since I've been pastoring, I've been having English teachers.
Mm.
So every time I say something, I don't say it correctly. They come right behind me. And then when I married this beautiful woman, I have an in-house English teacher. So, so I'll be like, okay, because I might mess around and I'll be playing with the daughter and I'll be like, roses is red, and then she'll come right behind me, roses are red.
Huh? Yep.
Ah,
I
so
I won't I was not gonna say anything, but I am reading your book and trying not to check for grammar.
oh Lord, help me, Jesus.
Hey, you need an in-house editor. I am more than willing to be one.
Hey, we're about to build our kingdom ecclesia health, I mean not health, but book ministry. We're gonna help people publish their books and everything.
Yeah.
So far we got, hey J Rod, we got J Rod.
Yeah.
Hey J Rod, you wanna come on with us? Now that'll be, as people say, that would be colorful.
Mhm.
um we we have my book,
Mhm.
my two books,
Yep.
and then we have Prophet Lloyd book, The Power of Prayer,
Yep.
and then we have another book by Pastor JBJ called The Proper Way to Forgive.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very
So we're waiting on Sarah book, the Constitution, uh, whatever. We're waiting on it. J Rod say, "Are you crazy?" You already know I'm crazy, J Rod.
I was gonna start with a book called How to Survive a Post-Apocalyptic Postmodern World.
Oh, hey, you know what I was thinking? We should have had a lot of people uh, go through you during their campaign and let you just hit them with questions. And
Oh, totally. Yeah, just put me up there. Seriously.
I
I've got
know,
questions.
oh yeah, you will have. Oh my God, yes. So, which direction are we going today, ma'am?
Well, I have a couple different um I wanted to do a pop quiz actually.
Oh, okay, y'all hear this? She finna pop quiz y'all.
So, okay, I'm taking the questions from a book, a little known book that was written in 1828.
Well, they failed
Uh,
already.
yeah, it was written for young Americans, like school age students, because the author was concerned that we were not, as a nation, understanding our constitution, and so therefore we were losing our freedoms in 1828. So this is only a few years after all of the big crazy stuff going on with the revolution and the constitution being written. Nice. And we are just it just blows my mind that this was written for school students, because I can guarantee you that not one single public school student and a good handful of homeschool students would not be able to answer most of these questions, because this is not taught in our schools today. So
Well,
anyway,
I'm just letting you know right now. I'm skipping class. I am not taking this test.
oh come on, this is going to be so fun. So fun. But I wanted to start with a quote real quick. This was John Jay. He was one of the three writers of the Federalist Papers.
Okay.
He also was the original Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. So he knew a really good amount of what the Constitution was about and why we had it and all of that stuff. So I'm going to get to that quote, but did you know that the Constitution, the average age of a constitution in the world Actually, this is I'm going to do this as a first question. The average age of a constitution in the international stage is A, 20 years, B, 200 years, C, 17 years, or D, 50 years.
Or D, what?
50 years.
50 years? Whew. I want to say D, but for some reason, the 20 years is dingling on my head. So I'm going to go with the 20 years.
All right, feel free to chime in, Jared. Actually, Jared won. It's 17 years.
Jared won. Jared, you cheating. You cheating.
Did you Google that, Jared, or did you know that? I might have talked about it in one of our groups.
Oh, no. Jared is texting you, and you're sending him the answers.
Oh, no, my phone's not here. I don't have it. My hands are free, see?
17, so it is 17.
17 years.
For some reason, I was thinking it was 20.
Yeah, nope. It's 17 years is the average age of a constitution in any of the countries that have constitutions. Good job, Jared. Then, way to go. Yeah, okay. So 17 years, and ours has lasted for 200 and almost 50 years. So how crazy is that? That even in spite of all of the abuses of the Constitution, it's still there. It's still present. We are still nominally following it. So the fact that that's the case, it shows you the power of what the Constitution is and what it does, and how much more powerful could it be if our citizenry actually knew and understood it. So John Jay stated this. He says, every member of the state, and he's talking about these United States, so all of the colonies at the time. He's David, nice. Every member of the state ought diligently to read and to study the Constitution of his country. By knowing their rights, they will sooner perceive when they are violated and be the better prepared to defend and assert them. So this is a catechism that was written, like I said, in 1828 by a man named Arthur J. Stansbury. And I actually don't know very much about Arthur Stansbury, but I do know that he was a dedicated constitutional scholar, and he really wanted the people in the United States to actually understand it. He was disappointed.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I'm so glad you're going in this route, and I'll tell you why. We just had an interesting conversation this morning with a gentleman. And I always tell people the three constitutions we got to know. The Constitution to the Kingdom of God, which is the Word of God.
Yep.
The United States Constitution and your state constitution.
Yep, exactly.
And just after this last election, we realized people didn't know their constitution because of the fact they were saying, well, he's going to be a dictator. Okay, first of all, you got to get rid of Congress. You got to get rid of the House. You got to get rid of the Constitution.
And the Supreme Court and the state constitution. Yeah, like all of it.
So, and that lets me know we're not reading. We doesn't know. So we can't, in other words, we cannot defend what we don't know.
Yes.
And I'm so glad you're going this way, but I hope all your questions is multiple choices.
They're not. They were actually supposed to write essays. So I could try to make them multiple choice, but it's the way that the questions are worded. These students actually had to write essays for each question. These are essay questions. So we don't get many of those anymore now. And
let me say this. That's one of the things that Apostle Rose, my wife, I just put it that way, when we open up the schools, want a class like this in the for the Constitution,
okay,
so that our children would know from a young age, but those. Well, let me say it this way: what you finna hit us with are now considered more college course than elementary course.
If that, yeah, and a lot of them are for not undergraduates, they're for graduate school. If you're going in to be a lawyer or something like that, these are questions that are asked. And
Right,
sometimes not
but
even
it
then.
was actually elementary though.
Yeah, elementary school. I mean, these because you think about it, most of the people in that day and age, if they went to school, they didn't go past 8th grade. So they had to know this stuff by 8th grade. You think about that. And a lot of this was oral presentations. So you could write essays, but they would also have to orally speak these questions and answers and understand them enough to teach them back to the instructor. So sure. Nice. Yeah, that's kind of, I like to whenever people ask me, well, who says you have those rights or whatever, I'll show them my Bible, and then I'll show them a copy of the original Constitution and say, "Hey, this is this is my hall pass for any of this."
I know, right? And,
Yeah.
and this is why I'm glad we got the show back. I mean, we back up and running.
Mhm.
We had to take maternity leave, so now
Yeah, it was
we're back,
a long maternity leave.
and because it's important that that people know
Mhm.
we and the sad part about it is we really don't know,
We don't. We don't.
and so go ahead
Yeah.
and Jeremiah. I mean, not Jeremiah, but J Rod, you up one. That's all right. I get you back.
All right, so here we go. So this the author Stansbury, he prepared this work. He said it is written expressly for the use of children, and it has been the aim and effort of the writer to bring down the subject completely to a level with their capacity to understand it. Now, when I go into the questions, I want you to remember that phrase. It was brought down to the level of children so they could understand it. Okay, so
That sound tricky.
yep, exactly. So here we go. First question. In what country do you live?
The United States of America.
Well, there you go. Good. That was easy. No problem, right?
Okay, 1-1, J Rod.
Um, here we go. What do you mean by a state?
Ooh, well, a state is a nation all by itself.
Yep. They're all under one government. So, I mean, any district of the country whose people are all under one government. That is what a state is called. So,
Okay,
again, this is elementary catechism, okay? All right. Cannot all the people of a country govern themselves?
say that again.
Cannot all the people of a country govern themselves?
You saying can they?
Can they not govern themselves?
Yeah.
It's basically saying, why can't we just have each person govern themselves?
Well, yeah, they supposed to govern themselves. That sounds like a trick question.
It is a trick question. You want to hear the answer?
Yes.
Okay. If every man was perfectly virtuous and knew what would be best for himself and others, they might. But this is far from being the case, and therefore the people of every country are and must be governed.
Okay. So
All
J
right, here we
Rod,
go. I'm going to skip forward a little bit. Ready?
me and you both got that wrong. We're supposed to.
All right, they get progressively harder. So they talk about laws, they go into what the business of Congress is, they go into what the business of the president is, how they're elected. So it basically goes through a citizenship test and asks them the basics of what the Constitution is and why it was created. So we get into some deeper questions. Here we go. Here's one. Do members of Congress receive anything for doing the business of the public?
Now or then?
In 1828.
Then no, they didn't.
Well, here's the answer. Their chief and best reward is the honor of serving their country. But as many of them cannot afford to leave their own business so often and so long without having the loss in some measure made up to them, the Constitution says that they shall be allowed a compensation to be ascertained by law and paid out of the Treasury of the United States.
Okay.
So, And then it goes in and explains
Oh,
how Congress, because it's a law, because it's
right.
legislated, Congress has to make their own compensation, right? And then, but this is a funny one, right?
But wait a minute. Rosie said one for her. And I'm sitting there like, okay. And the reason let me just say why I said my answer, right?
Mhm,
Because when I read it, right,
mhm.
when I was doing history, um, I heard the majority of the people that did serve did it out of honor for their
Yes.
country.
Yep.
And, you know, I didn't even look at the duck 1 point from David.
You're in the negatives now.
I didn't pay attention to, you know, because like I said, that was kind of tricky because I didn't pay attention to the Constitution. I
Mhm.
was doing it like because it was never meant, and let me say it this way, it was never meant for it to be a career.
Yes, exactly.
It was meant that you served for a while and then you went back home
Yep.
and somebody else came and served.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So it was never meant to be I started off poor and I leave out rich.
So when it says compensation, you think about that. It was compensation for the wages they would lose by having to leave their businesses for a time.
Exactly.
So it was
Right.
supposed it was like if you're on the jury, right? You get compensated for having to take off work. Now you
Right.
don't get full funding for, whatever you get paid at work is what no, that's not how it works. It was a compensation. So problem is that they didn't in the Constitution that they basically just stated that because it has to be done by law, the Congress has the power to set their own compensation. But here's the kicker, right? Have the people no way to restrain excessive wages for members of Congress? Do they have any way? Do the people have any way to restrain members of Congress in their compensation laws?
Yeah, vote them out.
You actually might be smarter than the eighth graders here. It says yes, the Constitution establishes that an increase of wages approved in one Congress cannot go into effect until after the next election, so that if the people want to remove the Congress that made that decision, they can. So you were right. You can vote them
Oh,
out.
aha, J Rod, another point.
All right, and it just keeps going. I mean, there's more and more questions, but it talks about what is a post road, right? Because one of the jobs of Congress is to manage the Jared. Yes, you can phone a friend. Of course you can. um one of the question or one of the powers that Congress has is to have control over the post roads and the post office, right?
Hmm.
And so they go into questions about that. What is a post road? How do you establish post roads, and what are they for? And what are the limits and all of those things? So I mean, the questions in here are absolutely crazy. Here we go. What else are the states forbidden to do? They cannot lay any duty on exports or imports. So it goes into what is the difference between the federal constitution and the powers, the enumerated powers that the federal constitution has, and then it goes into what are the powers that the states have or do not have, right? And then it opens that up and oh, it's just absolutely amazing. This book is so cool. It's a very small book. You can get it from wallbuilders.com and in
Oh,
their shop.
that one's from Wall Builders.
Yep, this one's from Wall Builders, and it is a fascinating study. All of the questions are just so amazing, and then on the end, it actually has an annotated version of the Constitution, so you can read through it, and when it was all ratified, and see the amendments and everything. It's such a little book, but it is very powerful, and it's really a great place to start if you're wanting to learn more about your Constitution. Obviously, you start by reading it, but then if you want to dive into why did they make it the way they did, why did they limit the powers this way, why didn't they limit them other ways, right? This is a great book to have. Is the Catechism.
And now we see how the Department of Education destroyed education
Exactly.
because if, like you say, eighth grade was like 12th grade, and you
Hmm.
had to know all of that. You had to You had to know the Bible. You had to know the Constitution. You had to know all. And this is one of the reasons why uh, the moral fiber is falling apart, because
Mhm.
people that we elected don't know the Word of God or the Constitution.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Well,
John Adams stated very clear, or was it James Madison? Now I get those two mixed up all the time. Stated very clearly that the Constitution that was written was only for a moral and religious people. It could not be efficient for any other. Right? It was basically saying if you are not morally secure, if you do not have a moral standard outside of the man-made government, if you do not have a moral standard that is set in place by divine providence, at that time that was what they called God, right?
mhm,
And it was the God of the Bible. It was not the God of, the Muslims. It was not Allah. It was not any of the other gods. It was not Buddha. It was none of that. It was the God of the Bible. If you do not have his moral standards set in place and they're not a virtuous citizenry, the Constitution is useless. It is a piece of paper with words on it. That's how
mhm.
strongly they believed that you cannot have a solid working constitution if you do not have a solid working moral standard. And that moral standard had to be outside of the government itself
Oh,
and
yeah.
outside of us, external to us. So yeah, so this was catechism that was done for school age students. And here's the thing, you were mentioning the stuff that they had to know by 8th grade, right? By 8th grade they had to memorize the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. They had to memorize large swaths of scripture, and they had to know and memorize George Washington's farewell inaugural address. And then what was the other one? The Mayflower Compact, or I'm sorry, the Magna Carta. That was what they had to know before they graduated from 8th grade.
From 8th grade.
From 8th grade, yes. Because those were our founding documents.
Right.
Have you ever read the Magna Carta? It's a fascinating, it's a very small document, but that was what was written, excuse me, is the Great Charter that happened at the beginning. Oh, let's see. It was the Charter of Rights agreed by King John of England. This was done in 1215. So the Magna Carta was done in 1215. And this was the rights of British law, and it influenced the early American colonialists. I can't talk. Colonialists. So the Magna Carta, I mean, this was a tiny little document, and yet it had so much power. And I think the fascinating thing about it is how it starts out. And I'm trying to find my copy of it. Hold on one second. It starts out. Oh, come on. I just want the preamble.
Well,
Goodness gracious.
it is funny and interesting as we continue to eat and dig and dig and dig, and then we look at what's going on and we be like, ain't no way they read the Constitution. Ain't no way
Yeah.
they understood the Bill of Rights. Ain't no way. And so some of them I get to say, ain't no way they read the Bible, because it's amazing how we always talk about our rights, but we don't know what they are.
Yeah, exactly.
They're gonna they're gonna take our rights away. Okay, what rights are they taking?
Yeah.
You know,
What rights are they taking? Yeah, we don't understand what rights are to begin with, and we don't understand what the responsibilities that come along with those rights that give us the freedom, right?
right,
Here's what the Magna Carta says. It says, "Know that before God, for the health of our soul and those of our ancestors and heirs, to the honor of God, the exaltation of the Holy Church, and the better ordering of our kingdom," and it goes through a whole bunch of different names of the bishops and everything who are part of this. First, that we have granted to God, and by this present charter have confirmed for us and our heirs in perpetuity, that the English Church shall be free and shall have its rights undiminished and its liberties unimpaired. That we wish this so to be observed appears from the fact that of our own free will, before the outbreak of the present dispute between us and our barons, we granted and confirmed by charter the freedom of the Church's election, a right reckoned to be of the greatest necessity and importance to it. So guess what? There's the first. That's the first of the Bill of Rights. Religious freedom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it just keeps going down and down. And it talks about the right to what you do with owing of money. So this was how we originally thought of the law, and this was in a monarchy, but it was still written giving fundamental rights to the people to be enjoyed, and it was to hold the king accountable, right? So now in America we don't have a king, we have many kings and many queens, right? We're our own monarch in a sense, we the people, and we have the rights written for us in our own constitution.
Yes.
And it very clearly states that that we have specific protected rights, but not only that there are enumerated powers that a federal government has in order to protect and defend those rights, right?
Right.
And so we have, when they were writing the Constitution, a lot of people were like, wait a minute, we don't want a massive federal government. We don't want to centralize our government. We can't do that because we're going to have our rights taken away, right? And so that's why they pushed for the Bill of Rights. But that's also why they tried so hard with the wording that they used to limit the powers that they were giving over to the federal government. They were only supposed to be the powers that the states and the people themselves could not do on their own. They needed help, right? So say again, they were surrounded by enemies in a sense, because there were many nations who did not want to see America succeed, Great Britain being one of them. I mean, they went back to war with them in 1812 because of it. They were hoping to get their colonies back. And so the Constitution was written in order to protect and defend our borders and to protect and defend our rights. And Alexander Hamilton, in the Federalist Papers, when he was describing the introduction to the Constitution, he said this: "It has been frequently remarked that it seems to have been reserved to the people of this country, by their conduct and example, to decide the important question, whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions on accident and force." So Hamilton was saying, this is why we're setting up this Constitution. We're at a moment in time, for such a time as this, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we can change the course of history. Before, if you think about all of the years before this Constitution was written, was conquest, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was who's got the biggest army and the strongest king, who can, enslave the people fastest, right? I mean, it was always about who's got the most power. Well, America at this time wasn't yet the most powerful nation in the world, right? We grew into that at some point. But what they were trying to decide was, can we do this? Can we create a government of the people, by the people, for the people, that is not going to dissolve because we can't get our act together and can't rationally think out and rationally come to terms with a moral standard, and also two, the laws of the land that will be simple enough that even the lowest farmer could understand them and follow them, and on the flip side, that the lowest farmer could understand what his rights are and which ones are protected. And so this was their whole basis for all of this, was to create this Constitution that had never been done before. Even with all of the other constitutions that had been attempted, there was always the idea that they were easily broken, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because most of the constitutions were written because the king just didn't want his head cut off, right? And so he would grant rights to his people in order to keep his head intact. But ultimately, it would fall apart as soon as he got a little cocky and self-assured, and the people aren't paying attention anymore. So what the Constitution was supposed to do was to awaken the people to, this is your government. You are the gatekeepers for this government, and therefore you need to understand. So we're going to create a document that is easy enough that the 8th grade class can understand it.
So in that process, right, when you use and I'm so glad that you used that phrase, the people governs, right? The people. And I really believe that one of the main reasons why they don't want people to read the Constitution, because it will allow the people to realize that the power is reversed, and that the power is not in the hand of the ones that is elected, it's in the hands of the one who did the electing.
Exactly.
And so, and that goes back to local government, right?
Yep.
If people in local communities understand that the power is not in the hands of the mayor or the alderman or the county supervisors, but it's in their hands, because they're the ones who make the decision of electing, right?
Yeah.
So let's look at Milwaukee real quick. For the president race, 462,990 people voted in the president race.
Okay.
What do you think Milwaukee will look like if that same 462,990 people voted in a mayoral race?
Exactly. Yes. What would it look like? It would look completely different.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The whole
the school board races, or the city council, or I mean, what about
the circuit court judges?
Yes.
If we teach them the powers in their hand, right? And when you call a town hall meeting for them to show up, they will show up, because they know that you got that power again. That it is your job to govern the government. And so,
and this is, I know I've said this before, it seems completely silly, but this is even down to, if you have an elected dog catcher, you should know what that dog catcher is like, right? You should know their character and their conduct, and whether or not they can fulfill the job and understand what their job is, right?
Right.
This is the thing. We belittle so many of these governmental positions, especially on the local level. We just had a very controversial race in our last election for our county. It was the Register of Deeds. Does anybody know what the Register of Deeds does? What'd she say?
You can hear her, right?
Yeah, I can hear what I just barely though. What did she say?
She said death, marriages,
birth.
What'd you say? Birth. What else you say, babe? She said, I don't know what else.
Property.
Property.
Okay, owning property is a right. Do you know how many countries have registers of deeds who are bought and paid for by the government, that if they don't want somebody if they have a political enemy that they don't want to own their own property and have that right, they will stuff up the work so badly that that deed is never registered in that person's name, right? Now, we have a people in Jackson County who do not understand that that is a constitutionally elected governmental position.
Okay.
Register of Deeds has a very, very important job to make sure that our property rights, our records of our property rights are protected and defended and properly submitted.
Right. I'm so glad you said that, because I was watching, there was a case where this developer developed some houses next to a farmer. And it kept trying to take the farmer to court. And every time it take the court, the judge is saying, the farmer is not on your land.
Yeah.
If you decided to put something there, you can't tell him what to do with his land.
Exactly.
And every time they turn around, they was trying their best to take him to court, but because of the registered deed, who draw the line on where the property line was,
Yep.
and made sure that nope, that's the farmer's territory. You cannot come and tell the farmer what to do on his land.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like you say, we don't pay attention to what's we hear registered deed. Oh, that ain't none. Ain't nobody gonna run for that. But
Yeah.
that is a very important position.
It is, and it is so telling because we had the opposition. So we ended up having a conservative run for that office. It was coming open. The person who was in it before was retiring, didn't want it anymore. And so we had a conservative step up to run for that office. And the backlash she got when, because every candidate is basically telling people what their purpose for running for that office is. And one of her purposes was to protect our property rights. And the backlash from the left about and from her opposition about how this isn't a constitutional position. There's nothing, we're not ruining people's property rights. We have no rights to, we don't have any authority over people. And it was like, no, you do not understand how important even this seemingly little job is. You're a paper pusher on the surface, but in the process you are actively helping to protect the rights of the people by making sure that their boundary lines that were drawn are theirs and in their name, and that it is recorded so that anybody who goes in and tries to steal it will have to go through the courts of law to do so.
And that's why if you look at it now, there's so many people losing their land because the register of deeds
Yes.
are helping people lose their land. I can live in Milwaukee, go on in another state, small town,
Mhm.
find out who's in trouble,
Mhm.
right? Pay that taxes, and now that's my land.
Yeah.
And you be sitting there like, now I'm supposed to pull up and say, hey, y'all, this is my land. Right. They're going to kill me and feed me to the hogs. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
but people don't understand. You need somebody honest there that will, like you say, protect your land.
Exactly. And so, yeah, so that's that. And so I'm bringing it down to that level. I know we were going to talk about the state constitutions later, but I'm bringing it down to that level because I want you guys to know, whoever's listening, whoever's paying attention, that this was the mindset of the people who went in to write our Constitution, right? Their mindset was that every elected official in government represented the people, that they had the highest law of the land was the constitutions that they followed.
Right.
And so if they did not follow the first constitution, the scriptures, and they did not follow the second constitution, the states, right, then they would not follow the final constitution, the federal government.
Right.
Right. And
Yep.
so this was the attitude that these people had when they went in to write up this very important document over a period of 100 days in a stuffy enclosed room that did not have air conditioner.
So you know they were stinking and want to fight.
Oh my goodness. Yes. They were so pissed off at each other by the end of it. Some of these people never saw each other again. I mean, okay, you're getting people from 13 colonies, some of whom are mortal enemies in the life out there. They are sitting in that room, not only praying and offering their pleas to God to come up with the wisdom to do this, but they are actively debating and discussing all of these things that they know need to go into a government, but they've never seen it succeed before. They have little bits and pieces from all the other governments in the world that they have to somehow figure out how they're going to manage to put it all together, and they know they're going to screw it up. And so even in that, they provided the amendment process, right? Of going in, and there's two different ways you can amend the Constitution. be careful with it. We don't
So,
want to amend it just willy-nilly. This is a process that we have to go through.
right. So I want to say, and I want to put on record that anybody that opened their mouth and say that the Constitution of the United States was a slave document never read it.
Oh, no. In fact, there's not even a single word about slaves at all in the Constitution.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
if you sit there and tell me that the United States of America Constitution is a slave document, you did not read it.
Yep.
You,
And then they'll go in and say, well, what about the 3/5 clause? They're 3/5 of a person, right? No, no, no. Let's dive into that for just a minute.
all
And
right.
you will hear Frederick Douglass and Martin Luther King Jr. and multiple people who read their Constitution and they understood it was not a slave document. It was a promissory note that every human being was created equal under God.
Yes.
And these were the protections that were put in place to guide and direct and govern without removing and stripping our rights. And so they were holding out for the promise, right? Like Abraham, who didn't get to see the promise of the son of the offspring who would crush the devil's heel or crush the devil's head, right?
Mm-hmm.
Abraham was holding on to the faith of that promise. That's exactly what the slaves were doing when they read this document too, or when it was read to them.
Right.
They understood that this was a document that was going to set them free someday.
Yes. And I'm glad you said it like that because I love to, and then I try to sound like the narrator that did the Frederick Douglass. So I'm gonna do it for you now because I love when he do that. And I say to you that after studying the Constitution of the United States of America and reading the Bible, I found out that the Constitution is not a slave document. If it was going to be a slave document, it would say we, the white people, instead of we, the people.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to love that. I always do that. I'll be like, nope, he said it this way.
Yep.
A black man is not a 3/5 of a man, you know.
Nope.
And here's the thing: if that was true, right?
Yes.
Robert Brown Elliott would have never made it to Washington D.C.
Yep.
Because why? How can you be 3/5 of a man and a congressman?
Exactly.
In 1800s.
Exactly. That we had black men in the was it the early 1800s already in our Congress. And let me tell you, were not popular with the rest of their congressmen but they understood that they were there for a very specific purpose, and that was to maintain and protect and defend the rights of the people, including themselves, and it did not depend on skin color.
Right. And the thing about it, last week Wednesday on my radio show, I read the Civil Rights Act.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
But I didn't read one Civil Rights Act. I read two Civil Rights Acts.
Mm-hmm.
The 1964 Civil Rights Act.
Mm-hmm.
The one was written in 1866 that got passed in 1875 Civil Rights Act. And I said, now listen to these. Which ones sound like they was set for blacks? Was it 1964 or was it 1866 that got passed in 1875? And it was like, wait a minute. The one in 18, yeah, because it was letting you know that the Civil Rights Act then, it was specifically for blacks and those that was enslaved. The one in 1964 was not only for color, but it was for the LGBTQ. This is why they say you're messing with my civil rights because of sex in that Civil Rights Act.
Yeah.
So so when I read them, they was like, wow, I never heard that one. I know you didn't.
Yeah, no, you didn't.
And and these are the things where I'm glad we pulling this up, and
Mhm.
We need to set up a game, do it by Zoom, or we can do it on here. Bring some people on and see, let's see if they're smarter than a real eighth grader,
Yeah.
and you ask those kind of questions. But
I'll have to figure out a way to get them into multiple choice answers, so it'll be a little bit easier for us to do a group of them instead of an
right,
essay question.
and I would say, you know what, we should do it, and we should have like, because we can put up to, I think I can put up to 8 to 10 people on here,
Nice.
right?
Nice.
So what we should do is we should invite 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and made it
Make sure
into
a
a
couple of them
game.
are homeschooled.
Huh?
Make sure a couple of them are homeschooled.
Right. And then have a game.
Mhm.
But you know what? Here's the scary part. I don't think neither side will win.
I know. It'll be fun to see though. Hey, we can make it like a, I don't know,
Like a Family Feud.
kind of, but then we could also we have to have some sort of compensation, like we give away one of your books if they get all the questions correct or something.
Oh yeah, we can give out a book, or
Although you probably won't give out many books
I
that
know,
way.
right?
No, we did not talk about the purpose of the 3/5 clause, my dear.
Well, hello, sir. I knew
So
you was somewhere around.
yeah, so the 3/5 clause, I got started going into it and I forgot. We got distracted a little bit. So
Right.
3/5 clause, that had to do with representation in Congress, right? So the states had certain numbers that they could use to send as representatives, right? The Senate was always, they had 2 senators, and then House of Representatives is a lot bigger because it's based on the number of the population in a state, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's divided by districts and everything like that. So the problem with the setting that in stone was that the South had a whole lot of people who were not represented in government because they were slaves. Okay. But they wanted to count them as full, each one as a full individual human being, so that they could have greater representation in Congress.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with the North, or the problem that the North had with that was, well, you've considered that your slaves' property, but now when you want greater power in Congress, when you want bigger numbers in order to keep slavery going, right? Because
Yeah.
if they have bigger numbers in Congress, they're going to just perpetuate slavery till the end of time.
Right.
The North said, we're not going to be doing that. You either have slaves and property, or you have free men who have ample representation in Congress, right? So, in order to basically keep the Union together, because even at the very beginning of our Union, we were already falling apart in many ways. In order to keep the Union together, there was a compromise, and this is where the 3/5 clause comes in. It says we cannot count every slave as one in the what's it called, census. We can't
Yeah.
count them as individual human beings in the census because the representation would be skewed and we would have slavery perpetually. However, we will give you a compromise in that we will give 3/5 to each of the slaves as representation. They're not going to be represented fully, but we will allow them to be represented 3/5. So that gives you a little bit more representation in Congress, but not enough that you're going to maintain your slavery forever, right?
Right.
So that was basically what the issue was, is the North and South were trying to keep the states together under the federal government, under the new constitution. But they also knew that they had vastly differing views on who represented a free man or
Right.
woman in that sense. And so therefore that it was for representative purposes only. It was for how many numbers were going to be representing us, each state in Congress. That was
Right.
it. We were not saying that the slaves themselves were 3/5 of a person. That is not at all. In fact, we were trying to protect their interests as much as we could at the time, by lowering the bar a little bit on how much of a representation they were allowed in Congress.
Right.
So yeah. If that explains it, I know I was a little
Oh
bit.
no, you did, and that's something that
Whoops. I think I lost my host. Oh no. Well, I could continue speaking and hope he comes back. um yeah, so yes, the Constitution itself is not a slave document. It never was and it never will be. It was always with the idea of the Constitution, the federal government, um basically filling the roles that the individual states and the people could not do for themselves, i.e. protecting our borders, um defending our high seas, and instituting trade, and declaring war if necessary against other nations, things of that nature. That was what the federal constitution was for. It was to set those boundaries, those enumerated powers in place. It was never a slave document, ever, ever, ever in its entire history. And so yeah, and then on top of that, I will tell you the Constitution almost didn't get passed by the states, by the colonies at that time, because they were several of the higher up, more influential members of Congress at the time, James Madison being one of them. Who else? George Mason. They were livid that there was no written Bill of Rights placed in the original Constitution. So the amendments, the first 10 Bill of Rights were promised. If you pass this Constitution, we will put in some amendments right away that deal with our rights. And that's where the Bill of Rights came from. And that took place over the next, oh gosh, 10, 15 years or so. But they wrestled. I think I'm trying to remember. They originally had 12, 12 in the original Bill of Rights, and they chopped them down to 10. But they covered everything from our freedom of religion and speech, freedom of assembly, all of those things, down to due process. You get to be heard. You get to face your accusers. You get to be heard in court by a jury of your peers. And then
stop right
then
there. Stop right there. Stop right there.
Okay.
Stop. I need you to do something.
Okay.
Break down the jury of your
Uh-huh.
peers.
Yes.
You know I
Okay.
was going there. The
Yeah,
moment
I
you
know
opened
you
your
were going there.
mouth,
That's partly why I mentioned it, because this is a sticking point for me so badly, and I've never even been on a jury, and I really wish I could be. Okay, as a jury is set up today, we have this elimination process, right? The judge goes through and interviews them, and if there is any doubt or question that that person who is scheduled to sit on the jury has any connection whatsoever, or any bias against this person, or any relationship whatsoever to the person who's on trial, they are eliminated from the jury of peers. Now, what is the problem with that? Then they don't have their peers being their jury. So
exactly.
the jury of the peers was supposed to be people who knew you, who knew your character, so that when you pled your case before them, they would be able to say, yes, he murdered this person, and here's why, and here's all of the circumstances surrounding it. He has never done this before. His character is impeccable. This was an act that would never happen again. He was defending his wife, whatever the case may be, and yes, he took a life. So we are going to say, yes, he's guilty, but we're also, as his peers, we know his character well enough to know that we need to make sure the punishment suits the crime, right? So the jury of your peers were the people in your community who knew you well. And it could be the people who hated your guts. But they attended the same church as you. They sat on city councils with you. They knew you very well. And whether they were prejudiced against you or not, that was not the point. The point was is that you were supposed to be able to plead your case. If you were accused of a crime, you were supposed to be able to plead your case to a jury of your peers, to the people who knew you best, whether they liked you or not. And then they were going to sit in judgment. It was an accountability thing. Think about that. Your peers are going to sit in judgment over your case for whatever that case may be, whether it's robbery, whether it's murder, whether it's embezzlement, whether it's, whatever the case may be. They're the ones who are going to sit as your judge. And then the judge would hand down the final verdict and the punishment that the jury themselves had decided for you. That was what their job was. That was the jury of the peers. What we have today is not even close to that.
I know. So that's why I was like, if I ever get a jury trial, I will not allow them to put anybody on that jury that don't know me.
Mm-hmm.
I will like, hold on, you're messing with my rights now. Put people on this jury that know who I am. Whether they like me, like you say, whether they like me or not.
Yep.
Because even if they don't like me, they know my character.
Exactly.
So even if they don't like me, they know my character. And so I don't know why I'm in this 3-dimensional thing right now. But
you're having some technical difficulties there, I think.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's because my computer battery is kind of low. So that's probably why it's doing that. But yeah, that's what I wanted you to touch on because people don't know that, just like in the Wisconsin Constitution. I know we got to go because we're already over an hour, but in the Wisconsin Constitution, families got to stop letting the DAs make the plea deals without them accepting those plea deals because they don't even realize that that's in the Wisconsin Constitution that they can't do that. And so it's so much to teach and there's so much to learn and there's so much.
There's so much. I could go on about it for days. So many different things.
I know. And so I am going. Are you ready? Because I know you got it. You ready?
Give me 1 second. I gotta find.
I've got to find it. I already know you got it. So
hold on 1 second. That's Thomas Jefferson. Where is my? This. I think that yes, this is George Washington's farewell address. I mentioned it at the beginning, and there's a paragraph in there. I know I've read it before. I'm pretty sure I've read it on our podcast, but I would like to end with this because, yeah.
Ready?
Yep, I'm ready. Okay, here it goes. George Washington was the greatest president who will ever, ever, ever be president of the United States, bar none. He was a great man, and even King George III, who was the king at the time of the Revolutionary War, had such great admiration and respect for him because as soon as Washington had served his time as president, and he served 2 terms, he handed back the authority and the power. No questions asked. He had no desire to run again. He had no desire to become president again. And he had served his terms and he handed that power back. And that is the mark of a great man, is somebody who can hold that power in his hands. Because at the time, you think about it, the Constitution was very new. The presidency was very new. He could have done so much with it, and he could have turned it into a monarchy. They offered him a crown when he first stepped up to that position, when they asked it of him, and he turned that down. And King George III was absolutely in awe of him. That's the mark of a great man. Anyway, he says this: of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that man claim the tribute of patriotism who would labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest props of the duties of men and citizens. The mere politician, equally with the pious man, ought to respect and to cherish them. A volume could not trace all their connection with private and public felicity. Let it be simply asked, where is the security for property, for reputation, for life, if the sense of religious obligation desert the oaths which are the instruments of investigation in courts of justice? And let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Whatever may be conceded to the influence of refined education on minds of peculiar structure, reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principles. So I'm bringing it back once again to our original Constitution, the scriptures, the Word of God. Washington and the men and even the women of that time who founded our nation, who set its wheels in motion, who set its government in, they knew that if you lost your religious standard, if you lost your moral standard, if you lost your virtue, this government would crumble faster than you could say George Washington. And so that's why they established the Constitution the way they did. That's why they established the state constitutions the way they did, because it all hinged on a moral and religious people who had the standards and the self-governance to follow the laws of the land and to know when those laws of the land were being violated and when those protections and rights were being violated. And that's what I got.
Okay. Mine is going to come again out of my book, which I am going to do. So, yeah.
Oh no. Something's going on in there. Well, I'm hoping we can close out with Dr. King's words, because I was really hoping to see where in his book he was going to read from. Well, let's see, what else can I say about our Constitution? Pretty much anything, actually. it's hard to stop saying things about the Constitution because there's so much. I will say this is a great book. I know I mentioned this one. It's selected writings of the founding fathers. So like the Federalist Papers are in here. I was a little bit disappointed they don't have the Anti-Federalist Papers in here, because the argument against the Constitution, the arguments against it, are just as viable and should be compared and contrasted with the Federalists. But I do have another Anti-Federalist Papers book. So but yeah, this has some selected writings. It has the original amendments, as well as the multiple drafts and different things like that. And it has inaugural addresses. It has just a lot of basically summary views of what our rights are and where they come from and everything like that. So this is a great book to have. Another one, this used to be a 3-volume set, but God and Government. This is an excellent one if you want to dive into the connection and the different jurisdictions and different authority structures and stuff, starting with the family and the home and moving up into civil government and how they all connect, but also how they need to stay in their own lanes as well. So yeah, but this one's a neat one because it's kind of set up in, I don't want to say textbook form. It is a book, but there's some really thought-provoking questions and kind of essay things that you can do at the end of each chapter that you can go into and dive deeper and really learn, what the structure of government and what God's kingdom work is in our government as well. So well, I don't know if he's going to come back on. I hope so. We'll see, maybe. I haven't gotten any messages saying he's not coming back. All right. Okay. Yep. Keep talking. Trying to get back on. All right. Um, so yeah. So another book. I know he's mentioned his own book. I will shout out to it because it's a really good one. It's short. It's not anything extended, or it's not 400 pages long, and it's really really easy to get into. Um, Definitely do that. I know he's doing a class involved with it, I believe, in Milwaukee. So if you're near there, you can ask him for more information about that. I think, is it in the book? Maybe not. I know he's got contact information and stuff that he shows up on the screen. So let me think. What else can I share with you guys? Oh my gosh, there's so many different things. There is. Here's one. This is an old one. Again, this is a big book, and this is not for the faint of heart, but it's really cool because it dives into the Christian life and character of the civil institutions, right? So we're talking about um, the ecclesiastical institutions, but this is talking about the actual civil institutions, so the government, the federal and the state governments, and how they started out with a Christian background. They had a Christ following background. They had massive religious movement within the civil courts and everything. And so the people who originally established our government did not shy away from religion and from Christ and from the work of the kingdom. In fact, they wanted it to be infused in everything because they had the idea that we have, based on the commission we talked about in the Bible, that the work that is done even in our civil governments must be done with the kingdom mindset. And so the commission was to go into the world and preach the gospel and disciple the nations, teaching them everything that God commanded. And that command has not changed. And so what we should be doing is in a in simple terms, it's converting the nations basically to follow the kingdom purpose and kingdom mission of God, because it's his kingdom here on earth. And so so that's our role as Christ followers, is to get ourselves involved in every aspect of the pillars of the nations, and that includes civil government. And so yeah, we should be praying for and hoping for and working toward and even being Christian leaders in our governmental positions. We should be following Christ in everything we do and not separating out the sacred from the secular, because that never ends well. I can guarantee it. The last 100 years have proven that over and over and over again. So, so anyway, this is another really good book. No, I have not read the entire thing. I use it as a reference guide. So yes, I am a reader, but I also have kids, and I only get through so many books at a time. So hi, Dr. King, you're back.
Oh, I am back. Okay.
I was
Lord,
just recommending books, so you know me.
yeah, I saw it on Facebook. Did you get my message?
Yes, I did, about keep talking.
Keep going. Yes.
All right, well,
Okay.
I did. So there we
So
go.
now I'm going to, out of my book, I'm going to share my thoughts for the day through my book. And
What page?
page 56.
Awesome.
And I'm going to talk about the importance of being filled with the Holy Spirit. Being filled with the Holy Spirit is not a one-time event, but a continuing process. In Ephesians 5:18, Paul encouraged believers to be filled with the Spirit, indicating that it is something that should happen regularly. To be filled with the Spirit is to be continually empowered by God for the work of the kingdom. Many believers think of the filling of the Holy Spirit as something that only happens during moments of prayer or worship, but it is meant to be a daily experience. As believers seek the presence of the Holy Spirit in their everyday lives, they receive the strength, the wisdom, and guidance needed to fulfill their kingdom assignment. And so I want to say that, even if you understood kingdom, then you will understand what we're doing, because what we're doing is our kingdom assignment. And so This is why we come on. We don't come on because we think we know it all. No, we come on to empower you guys so that you can have the best of the best. And before we go out again, we're going to say goodnight to y'all so I can fix what's going on with my computer. Again, thank you again, Constitutional Queen.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
Text me what day next week you ready, and then I'll be ready.
Sounds good. I'm ready.
All right. God bless everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah.